order. This is the September 8th, 2015 meeting of the Fairfield Town Plan and Zoning Commission. First item on the agenda is meeting minutes, bills and communications from August 25th, 2015. So tonight we have two commissioners absent, Alessi and Jacobson. Commissioner Noonan, he'll sit for Commissioner Alessi, and Commissioner Francis for Jacobson for the meeting minutes from last time, okay? You were present. Okay?
Sounds good.
So we have one correction to the minutes, which we've identified already. That's Commissioner Francis, right? Voted on the Barberry Road application. That was not recorded correctly, but we now have that down. So that's one amendment. Can I have a motion on that? Motion to approve by Commissioner Coleman.
I'll second it as amended.
Seconded by Commissioner Barrett as amended. Okay. Other than that modification, does anybody have any questions? Comments? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Minutes are adopted unanimously with that one correction. So now, Commissioner Corcoran, you are sitting for Commissioner Alessi, and Commissioner Noonan, you're sitting for Commissioner Jacobson. Okay. Next item is 530 Pemburn Drive, request of William Roman Jr. for 50% release of a $24,020 bond pertaining to subdivision improvements in an A zone.
Okay, this is a three-lot subdivision on the corner of Pemburn and Reed Street. It was approved in May of 2009. This is the bond amount for Lot 2, and you've got I left on the table a email from earlier this afternoon from the engineering department recommending that a couple of punch list items that they had have been completed, so they're recommending release of that portion of the bond.
Thank you. Motion to approve by Commissioner Coleman.
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Calabrese. Anybody have any questions on this? Ready to vote? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Yeah, it carries unanimously. Next item is old business. Zoning regulation amendment. The application of the Affordable Housing Committee of the Town of Fairfield to amend section 10.6.9, 10.6.10, 10.17.3, and 10.17.5 in the Designed Residence District regulations regarding density, design standards for affordable housing.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll briefly go over what was presented at the hearing and then outline the findings that you need to make when you're reviewing a zone amendment application. Again, as mentioned, the proposed amendments are to our section 10 of our zoning regulations, which is the Design Residence District regulations. The first proposed change would be to require proposed elderly family development have at least 20% of dwelling units meet the definition of affordable in order to qualify for a density bonus. Presently, developers of elderly housing development do qualify for 50% increase, but without making any provision for affordable. So this amendment would require that. The second portion of the proposal is that the proposed changes seeks to delete reference from minimum bedroom counts for affordable units, as well as minimum square footage and maximum occupancy of aged restriction units. Essentially, the reason for this, it seemed to be somewhat problematic as far as a fair housing perspective. As far as the number, what we're changing is right now it reads not less than 2 bedrooms, no more than 2 persons per unit, and unit size not less than 450 square feet. Most of those are controlled, at least the size, by health and building code requirements. So again, it was a request that those particular design requirements be amended. And the third portion of this first request, the proposed change seeks to clarify existing language and conform with the applicable state statutes. The elderly family development is a defined term in our zoning regulations under section 31.212. Section 1017.5 presently references a deed restriction period of 25 years, whereas the state statutes provides for a minimum term of 40 years for deed restriction. So again, these amendments would attempt to bring us closer in line with the state statutes. That, Mr. Chairman, really quickly is what was presented as far as this first portion of the amendments at the public hearing.
Okay, great. Thank you. Commissioner Corcoran, you were not here, but you listened to tapes. You're up to speed on
Yes, I am.
this item, and also on the second one, the zoning subdivision regulations for item B.
Yes, that too.
And Commissioner Calabrese, same?
Yep, all caught up.
All right, so same people are voting.
If you want really quickly, I can go through the findings.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
Again, as far as any amendment to our zoning regulations, the authority to do such thing is outlined in the state statutes. That outlines the authority of the Planning and Zoning Commission of the state of Connecticut. That, along with court cases that have defined the enabling statutes. Here are a list of findings that the commission must review whenever reviewing a zone amendment regulation. First of all, and you've heard most of these before, the commission must find that time, experience, and reasonable planning for contemporary and future conditions indicates the need for the proposed amendments. Number 2, it has been demonstrated that the proposed zone amendments are warranted and would serve the general health, welfare, and safety of the town of Fairfield. And number 3, the proposed zone amendments promote a level of development that would serve to protect property values in the neighborhood and enhance the community. The other aspect of this is it talks about consistency with the plan of conservation development as outlined at the hearing. The Affordable Housing Committee had put forth some policies, and needless to say, these proposed amendments would be consistent with the affordable plan that they have approved. So that, Mr. Chairman, are the findings you must review.
Thank you. Is the revised affordable housing plan, is that now part of our POCD?
No, not presently, but
Not present. Soon. But not present. Okay. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Not yet? Motion to approve by Commissioner Coleman,
I'll second it.
second by Commissioner Barron. Commissioner Coleman?
I support this, and I can see why there was confusion at the public hearing about exactly what impact this would have on the town of Fairfield, because taken out of context, it's hard to understand what is trying to be done here. But I think that anything that makes affordable housing more available in Fairfield is to our benefit. There was some concern about it ruining the character because it would increase the density, but that was a misunderstanding. The biggest risk to the character of Fairfield is frankly the 830G legislation, and anything that encourages builders to make more affordable housing available and not destroy a character of a neighborhood is to our benefit, so I support it.
Thank you. Commissioner Barron?
Yeah, just speaking on this motion, I do support it. I mean, it affects our section 10, 10.6, and 10.17, or design standards. Again, this is the section of our regulations that deals with what is a designed residence district. There's a bunch of stuff that's included, just, as we see about the different underlying residential areas and the allowable densities. Nothing in this proposal changes any of that. That is just what our regulations are. So what I think this seeks to do is try to encourage more affordable housing or elderly developments, one of the two, under our regulations. So somewhat of an alternative, if you will, to 830G. I mean, I support it. We were giving the 15% density. Now we're requiring the 20% affordable housing. That's good. How effective it will be, I think even, they say, we don't know. It remains to see. But it is an alternative. It encourages the use of affordable housing. It encourages trying to build affordable housing within the construct of our regulations. So I'd approve it. I'm still a little hazy, again, let me just clear up on that. Removing the 2-bedroom I'm okay with, but Mr. Wenner, Mr. Devanchi, can you explain again why it's okay to remove the minimum size? I mean, I know we say it's controlled by the building codes, but didn't you get up at the hearing, Mr. Wett, and say, I mean, how are we going to be sure that, we don't want units less than 450, let's say we don't. How are we going to be sure that that's not, what's the point of striking that?
Well, elsewhere in section 10, the requirement is a minimum of 500 per unit. The 450 was qualified as to conversion of existing structures, the minimum unit size shall not be less than 450 square feet. So it wasn't an across-the-board standard, it was just for converting existing units.
Was this for, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this was for accessory apartments? Is that, if I recall, the accessory apartments were 600, and we had planning meetings where the decision was to actually go down to 450, I think, from 600 had been the previous.
That's already been, yes, that's already been approved, but that's not
no, but I'm saying
necessarily
that's,
a driver here.
No,
This was,
but I'm just saying that that's what you mean by conversion of existing structures.
No.
I'm not
This
sure
is
what
condos.
this
This is
language,
affordable housing.
I think this is talking about having an existing multifamily building that's going to be converted to condominium type. I don't know that that's ever applied, but elsewhere, if you're building new, the minimum is 500 square feet per unit.
So by striking this, we haven't really decreased the minimum and said there's no minimum. Basically, it's
Correct.
now 500 because we can move
Correct.
this in effect. Okay.
Sorry, that's correct.
That's an okay way to interpret that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
That was
agree with that.
that was the one thing I wanted to just clarify. And then I'm okay with the 25 to 40 years. I think 40 years makes sense. That's what it is for 830G. That's what our regulations should call for here. So, I mean, overall, I support it, and I don't have any issues with this application.
Commissioner Kennelly.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Two questions to staff. I want to explore a little further. I support 10.6.10. I agree we should be in line. 25 should go to 40. But I am concerned on 10.6.9 and better understanding the dropping of the two-person per unit requirement. In the course of questioning with Mr. Barnhart, he noted that there would be what he described as at first he said, well, yeah, you could take it out. But then he said there was also that possibility that would be a problem because it wouldn't meet HUD's evidentiary test, federal housing law's evidentiary test about what was acceptable. In other words, that we might locally have an artificial cap of 2 persons, but for that particular kind of unit, but it wouldn't hold up if we were going to change 10.6.9 as a way to essentially try to address an issue related to affordable housing. So can you talk about how the 2-person limit plays into this and why it should be dropped as a result? That does seem to be a concern also, because I can recall that there was talk about what constitutes an elderly family and things like that, and I believe it's 1 person aged 55 or older.
That's correct.
Now, I understand that we want very much to support affordable housing, but my concern, and I'll let staff address this, because I may be off base, is that are we potentially, by making that change to 10.6.9, opening ourselves up to situations where the HUD definition for affordable housing for age-restricted becomes 1 person over 55, but with really no assurances to how many folks can be with that 1 additional person who's not over 55. That's my concern here. So can you talk a little bit about what's at work with that and potential unintended consequences in terms of how do we control something like that? Obviously, the regs were written to limit this at one time to 2 persons. There were concerns on the commission. Can you talk about that?
I'm not really sure, other than what was, I somewhat understand your concern. However, what was presented to us is that the Affordable Housing Committee, through Mark and felt that it was problematic for the fair housing perspective. That would mean that if you start restricting
The number of persons.
the number of persons.
You're in violation of some of that fair.
Correct, and I think that's
Okay, I got it.
frankly
That's, so I just wanted to
main
confirm what
reason.
I thought from staff.
Yeah, that was the
So-
main reason.
Okay, so I won't support 10.6.9 as written, the change as written. I would support 10.6.10, as I said. I think that we have to be careful in our enthusiasm to look to encourage more affordable through age-restricted, that we are careful, that we understand what the underlying HUD and fair housing rules are here. And from my perspective, we're certainly willing to, sit down in a planning meeting and look at this and maybe have additional presentation from Mr. Barnhart, although we'll see how the vote goes tonight. But I am concerned about the potential with this language that is being removed as part of the changing 10.6.9, taking that two-person cap off, that you do leave Fairfield open to this potential for a senior unit, an age-restricted unit, being defined as one person over 55 without a clear listing exactly of how many people could live with them. And I do think that, at least to me, doesn't meet the concerns under Test 2 of our findings, which is we have to be concerned about the health and safety of Fairfield. I don't think it meets Test 3, which is that we should be supporting things that enhance property values and is reflective of the community. So for that reason, I do think that somehow in item A, I would prefer to see, at least for now, section 10.6.10 supported, but the change to 10.6.9 at least amended out now for tabling or future discussion or look, but I'd like to have a better, firmer understanding as to exactly where we're going in terms of what the cap could be in this kind of an age-restricted unit, which, as we're hearing tonight from our own staff, and we heard from Mr. Barnhart under questioning in the public hearing, can be one 55-year-old and an unclear number of people under 55.
Commissioner Corcoran?
Continuing on what Jim said, I thought I heard earlier when our staff was explaining this that there are other local rules that control how many people can live in a unit. Do we know what those rules are?
Well, if it's a family, it's any number of related individuals. If it's an unrelated family, it's no more than 5 unrelated individuals.
It's in our definition section.
So I support these amendments. I think they're an incremental step towards creating possibly some affordable housing units. I don't think it's a solution to everything, and I think the Affordable Housing Commission has other proposals that may be put into place in other boards and commissions, but I support this.
Very good. Commissioner Calvert?
I'm going to be siding with Commissioner Kennelly on this one. I agree that I don't like the wording of dropping the two-person per unit in 10.6.9. I think it does leave the town open for situations we don't want to be in. And I'm also not pleased that there's confusion on the wording, and it doesn't seem like there's a very clear understanding of what this proposal is actually meant to do. So if we can amend that out, I'm fine with that.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a question? If we were to propose such an amendment to the sponsor, those who made the
Well, it would be, at this point,
the motion to
procedurally,
approve?
I think that the motion would be to approve certain of the amendments, and we can either table that one, or we could reject that one. I mean, we don't have to necessarily go up or down on the whole package. Before we get there, though, I want to hear a little bit more about this, because I do think that there are answers to these questions, and I'd like to understand better what the concerns are about, what we're leaving ourselves open to, quote unquote, because it's pretty clear to me what the intent of the regulations are and the safety net of the broader compliance with the rest of our regulations in terms of the number of people that are permitted to live in a residential unit and not.
No, and actually, clearly, as was just stated by staff and was also stated by Mr. Barnhart in the public hearing, Mr. Chairman, it actually isn't. It would be if we are going to use age-restricted housing as a count towards, as also as affordable housing.
Yep.
We have to abide by not our local regulations, but by what HUD and what Fair Housing wants us to do. So that built in, for example, you were mentioning about, obviously 500 square feet is correct, but I do recall, and, obviously we could speak with Mr. Barnhart again at a future meeting, but he did acknowledge that it was federal rules that would apply. He said to me he said, you can leave in the two-person cap. He said, I don't know that it will meet the evidentiary standard. In other words, that the federal government has what it views as its appropriate standards.
Right, and so the reason that it's being proposed to be deleted is so that those units could count. That
Right.
with this restriction in place,
Right.
including the two, even if those units were built, they wouldn't count towards an affordable housing unit under HUD regulations, and so therefore the proposal is to remove it. And we do have, we're talking about this all in terms of the minimum, but units are not built to the minimums of 500 square feet. I mean, they're going to be larger units that are built. We have a limitation on the number of people that are suitable for a particular size of dwelling. And I mean, you're not going to have 5 people, unrelated people, living in a 500 square foot apartment.
That may be true, Mr. Chairman, but I'm just looking for someone in authority to tell me, if I take out the cap that we have locally on how many people can be in a unit like this, what that is. What I do know from the public hearing is that one person of 55 now will constitute qualifying this, and then other individuals under the age of 55 can live with them. So if Mr. Barnhart or representatives of the Affordable Housing Committee can explain to me that, oh, no, don't worry, in a 500 square foot unit, for example, under HUD rules or something, it's only 1 additional or 2 additional, whatever. But I would say that the language Mr. Barnhart used at our public hearing was, it has to meet an evidentiary test. And my sense is that, when he's talking to staff, is that test is that HUD decides, or the FHA decides sort of what Fair Housing decides as opposed to our regulations. But if there's a definitive answer that supports what you're saying, that is, no way can it be 1 person and 3 others in a 500 or something, okay. I just wondered what that definitive answer is. Otherwise, I'd just assume prune this out, come back to it, and we can certainly add it down the line. I don't have any problem with that at all.
I understand. So, Commissioner Calabrese, what are we leaving ourselves open?
Well, the scenario I'm envisioning is someone that's over the age of 55, let's say a young grandmother, and now the whole family moves in. Daughter, kids, son, whoever. And again, it's a 500 square foot apartment, but if there's no regulation on how many you can cap it at.
So, that's not happening now.
Well, because we have a cap of 2 right now.
No, I'm talking about in other apartments in Fairfield. I mean, we don't have 5 to 10 person families living in 500 square foot apartments. What about this is providing incentive?
Mr. Chairman, just
I'm seeing some.
I just want to clarify the context in which this section would apply. The idea here is to make it to be more of a potential density bonus that someone might actually utilize versus going the 8-30G route. At present, there are 0 units in the town of Fairfield that are subject to that cap, that occupancy cap. There haven't been any units built under this density bonus that is presently subject to an occupancy cap. So if the concern is there are some units out there that now will be uncapped, that is not the case, because there haven't been any units built under this section of the regulations.
may I ask why the cap was put in place then? Both of you were probably here when it was written.
I don't have an answer for that,
Because I was on the commission when we actually, again, looked at some of these standards, and one of the things that didn't get removed was the cap. And no one ever talked about it not being important or a waste or sort of an appendix as you're describing it. But, Mr. Chairman, my point is just simply that I'm comfortable with 10.6.10. I happily will support that now. All I ask is to perhaps simply have us pass on 10.6.9 tonight, and at a future meeting, I'm sure if we get our questions answered, I have no problem supporting it if it turns out that's, I'm not looking to create a boogeyman. I know a lot of hard work went into this, but I do.
I hear you.
So that's where I'm going.
No, I do. I hear you and I appreciate your comments, your position. Commissioner Barrett, see if so.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the concept, I don't really, it's not like I have any strong disagreement with what was said. I look at these regulations, and again, I may be misreading, but I look at 10.6.9 used to be giving a bonus for elderly development, and 10.6.10 was a bonus for affordable housing. And now, 10.6.9 has actually been changed for elderly and affordable. It's actually put an additional requirement there. It's not that much different than 10.6.10 right now, other than it's for elderly. I think the concept of elderly development and the definition are important. I would be comfortable voting for the other ones and maybe tabling this one. Some of the options, again, I shouldn't be rewriting it, but I think potentially we could do a simple rewrite, again, maybe, have another discussion, just where the underlined is the stuff that we're adding, and then this cross out, and we just left in, but not more than 10 persons per unit, period, and then got rid of the rest of the stuff. That would achieve what Mr. Calabrese and Mr. Kennelly seem to be concerned about, and it would get rid of the other restrictions. Well, I don't really have a problem with leaving the two in, because I think of elderly, I do think, a two-person restriction is probably what we're thinking of there.
Just in response to that, I'm not being argumentative, but I believe that option is available to you. You don't have to go back to public hearing if that's the outcome you desire.
Right, but I would say this, because I did raise this with Mr. Barnhart in public hearing. Anybody who hasn't, if you want to go back and look at the tape, I asked him about this business about could we leave the two in and that be a compromise? And he said to me, yeah, you could do it, but, he said, and I asked, you have to understand, if you're, basically, there is a change here. And what he said was, well, look, you want your elderly, you want your senior housing now to count as affordable.
Yeah.
When you do that, you give up a modicum of control, because that loss of control is basically what you sign off for to be credited for affordable housing.
Well, it's not loss of control necessarily. It is that the regulations must be consistent
with federal housing, exactly, and that's what he said. He said that essentially, if we left in the two-person cap, it's unlikely that it would be enforceable.
Correct.
Right, and so my point is I don't think that ultimately is a... Right, so that's why I don't think we can do that, Mr. Secretary, only because it essentially will be, it won't solve the problem. What we really need is to have a firm understanding, I think, which wasn't clear, is to what is ultimately that impact? Now, it was, to me, I thought it was soft-pedaled, because when I pressed Mr. Barnhart on the point, he continued to say that ultimately he didn't have a number for me. He didn't, if you look back at what was said at the public hearing, he didn't say that, well, if you go from 2, well, it's only 3 for 500, or it's only 4. What he said was, it must meet the evidentiary standard that federal housing law requires. So what that may mean is, it may be what the neighborhood can handle. It may be whatever the current standards are based on whoever is, in the administration in Washington, D.C., depending if they're conservative. But finally, let me just say this, and I probably don't want to dominate, but let me just say this. The good thing about having a cap, and my guess is why it was there, and when I was on the commission, no one ever talked about removing it, is that at least left in a general understanding in town that if you're going to do some kind of a unit like that, 2 was the number. Now we don't know. So that's why I think, again, I have no problem, once I have a definitive answer, of passing 10.6.9, if it's an answer I can live with. If it's not, I reject it. I just think for our own good sense, it would be better to pass 10.6.10.
There's also something to be said for having a definition based upon square footage per person. A cap of 2 is not necessarily appropriate for a 1,500 square foot apartment. More people can live in a 1,500 square foot apartment, and frankly, I do support the definition of the elderly family being, a person over 55 living with their family to support them in their older age. That's the purpose. That's the spirit behind this, so that it's not, so that there is an opportunity for, for a family to be living with the elderly people, right? Are we talking?
So I misunderstood, because I worked as a journalist in New Jersey. What goes on is when I covered the stuff, you have what are age-restricted, affordable units for the elderly. That's
Yeah.
where grandma goes because it's an inexpensive place to live. What we seem to be talking about more is grandma can qualify for this unit in Fairfield. Now, her daughter, her brother, her son, whoever might be much less than this, would come and live there. Now, again, I want to be alarmist. I'm not saying that there probably couldn't be a reasonable standard that could be explained to us. I do know that from what I saw in the public hearing, I didn't hear it. So for me, I'm just comfortable kicking the can a few weeks down the line on 10.6.9 and passing 10.6.10 and moving on.
Commissioner Corcoran.
I'm not clear how you would enforce the number of people who would be in an apartment.
We have rules now.
Yeah, what do you mean? So we currently have a max of 5 unrelated people living in a residential dwelling unit. So, there are issues from time to time with rental units for college students,
yeah.
for example. And the way that is enforced is a neighbor realizes that there are 8 people living there and there are 6 cars in the driveway, so they call Matt Decker and zoning enforcement and send somebody
Also, the
out
health
there to take a
department, any
look.
rental unit, they're
The health
required
department,
to
you know,
list the number of people.
So, we do have restrictions on the number of people living in a dwelling unit as those things are defined in our regulations, and mechanisms to enforce them.
So if we had related parties, we would have a different standard for these dwelling units than we would have for other dwelling units?
I don't know if anyone knows the answer
Well,
to that.
I mean, when you say we would have, the suggestion has been made that the removal of the cap leaves the number of people sort of undefined. So the answer to that preliminarily is no, it's not undefined because our other regulations have definitions, 5 unrelated, but it is unlimited with respect to related people. So, there are, though, limitations by virtue of health and safety to how many people can live in a dwelling unit. I mean,
Right.
that's just, there are mechanisms to enforce that.
So
But it is undefined in terms of a maximum number of people when they are related.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm not sure I would want to put in a limitation on the number of people to a dwelling unit just because one of the persons is over a certain age.
No, but what it is the current standard is that if you have an age-restricted unit like this now, it is a 2-person cap as to how many people can be in an age-restricted unit, because the town and the commission in the past has viewed age-restricted as different than affordable. And as the secretary pointed out, and Mr. Barrett's pointed out, we're trying to make 10.6.9 similar to 10.6.10 to now say essentially that not only are we going to do better on affordable by making our deed restricted 25 to 40 is the part I'm comfortable with, but we're also going to do things to our age restricted housing that now will allow it to qualify under federal rules to be also considered as meeting our standard for affordable housing. My concern is simply when we do that, to some extent, we now do lose a modicum of local spelled out control, and I just want to understand better than I heard in the public hearing what HUD or what fair housing law would be in terms of what that would be. And that's why I'm comfortable with I think I could get a second from Mr. Calabrese for seeing if those who, move to approve this would accept the amendment of, for now, moving on 10.6.9 in the future.
Can I just make one more comment?
Sure.
It goes to Mark's question about enforcement. Don't misunderstand what, and of course, Mr. Barnhart can correct me if I'm wrong, but when they say...
Microphone?
He's having
I'm
trouble
sorry.
hearing you.
When he said that it's maybe problematic to the fair housing perspective, that came down to enforcement. I mean, the point is, from a zoning aspect, if someone is in a unit, elderly unit, there's 2 people there, all of a sudden a third person, a brother, shows up and is living with them. The question is, do we have a right to say they can only have 2?
Well, and just to respond to that, because I was a point that Mr. Barnhart and I discussed very end of that hearing. He said there is a federal evidentiary standard. He did not say 2, 4, related. He said an evidentiary standard. To me, that may be a series of things, and we ought to know what that evidentiary standard is. He didn't elaborate, but I, for one, would like to better understand the evidentiary standard and I don't think there's any rush. We're all want to do something to do our part for affordable housing. We can pass 10.6.10 and move on.
Commissioner Noonan?
I have no problem tabling to get a better idea of what Mr. Barner has to say. When I heard evidentiary standard, though, my guess is it's a case-by-case basis. We're not going to have a very definitive answer one way or the other. And that's when he first said that to me, I don't know we're going to have a better... He's got to tell us what it is. It's probably going to be 3 prongs. It's probably going to be, depending on the neighborhood, we're going to have...
Right.
It's going to be very fluid. So I don't mind tabling it for the courtesy to see what it is. I'm guessing we're not going to be in any better position than we are now, just knowing what the test is and knowing that it's going to be case by case.
I agree with you. I think that you're right, but I do think it's a fluid standard. I couldn't tie him down. It's kind of like trying to nail Jell-O. And as a result, knowing that neighborhoods will have to deal with that issue, I think he was soft pedaling that a bit. Saying, well, in the sense that he said, sure, keep the 2-person cap, but if you're going to really submit this as if you're going to make 10.6.9 now something that you can present to HUD as, here's an evidence of us moving towards affordable, doing a better job on affordable, well, then they're going to say, your cap is not worth the paper it's written on, and sorry, that's it. So that's
I guess the question is, do we balance the need to keep the cap versus the need for need or the desire to count it for the affordable housing?
Yeah.
And so, just to be clear, I mean, what you're worried about is, 12 folks moving in with grandma?
I doubt highly that is the level. But what I would say is that
So what are you worried about?
Well, I'm worried about I'll be clear. Past commissions put in this cap with the concern that an age-restricted unit be one that wasn't an invitation to abuse, that it was meant to be something that was going to be elderly folks in that spot. That's what people could expect if they were dealing with an age-restricted unit in their neighborhood. What we're doing, because I think there's a struggle here. There really isn't a free lunch. The truth is, you are going to have to vote on this. And what you're going to have to decide is, commissions in the past wrote this, Fairfield commissions, felt for whatever reason it was important enough to put in this cap when it comes to age-restricted housing. We reviewed this when I was on the commission, when Mr. Barrett was on the commission. While the staff has said that there are no examples of this, no one said, well, since there's been no examples, let's dump the cap. The cap was there for a purpose. But yes, when it comes to affordable housing, we're looking for free lunch, there isn't one. You're right, Mr. Noonan, it is correct. My hope is there might be some definitive answer, like the chairman thought there might be, but I agree with you. I think it's more likely we're going to hear some 3-pronged test or something at best out of a handbook that is the basis for the evidentiary test. So you'll have to decide. Do you want to lose that level of local control in order to allow these age-restricted units now to be counted towards affordable? I wouldn't be. I wouldn't.
I mean, there is a move here from having 2 elderly people in an apartment to an elderly family development. I mean, that's the crux of this. The intent is that it will be an apartment in which a family will live, in which there will be one person, at least one person, over the age of 55. Now, that's the intent of the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not trying to amend our rules to add a cap of 2 people. I'm trying to say that I'm comfortable with the current cap, and I don't want it changed. You're arguing that you're comfortable with it? Okay. At
the end of the day, I think where I come out is that the cap was, from what I've heard, arbitrary, frankly. And, it was there, but given the cap, we wouldn't get credit for the affordable housing units under HUD regulations. And that in order for us to get credit, we can't have a cap, right? I mean, and I think that the concern, the fears that somehow we're going to have, a family of 12 having grandma simply to take advantage of the affordable housing, the elderly family development, I think is really unfounded, and I think it's alarmist. And so I would be in favor of us voting on the motion and seeing where we are. Because if a majority of the commissioners are in favor of adopting the regulations as they've been proposed, then we're done. And if they
point of order, Mr. Chairman, we'd like to propose an amendment I'd like to propose an amendment to item 2A. I'm entitled as a member of the commission. No, anyone can propose an
No, you
amendment.
can't.
All right.
No, you can't. Only the movement can seek to amend their motion. If the motion is denied, you can make a new motion if you want, but you can't move to amend her motion.
I don't care to amend my motion.
Commissioner Barrett?
Yeah, I won't take up that. I just want to make one point that we have two other sections. We're not talking about two sections. We're also looking at 1017.3, which removes the
Yep.
two-bedroom minimum, and 1017.5 is the 25 to 40 years. I'm in favor of that. I just want to make sure we know there's not just
Right.
two sections. I just have a quick question for staff. Really helpful. Great. Did you say before, under 10.6.9 as it's currently written, have we got any elderly developments built in town under this regulation?
None.
None. So as far as like the rationale or trying to encourage anything, we haven't gotten any elderly out of this.
Exactly.
This, to me, that's why to me, I'm not a little kind of indifferent, because this is in effect making it a little more restricted. However, if somebody wants to propose a nice elderly development, it'll now be counted for affordable housing. But it's not like this has been used in the past and at all. The only elderly development I remember that had an elderly construct to it was Stone Ridge, and that was eventually changed because they couldn't have it as the elderly percentage they wanted.
That was a different
Section.
Yes. There was one development that was approved under this section, but ultimately they came back to the commission to eliminate the age restriction.
Right, okay. So my point is that, it's not like we're removing a limit that's been really holding things down.
Well,
Nothing has been built under this, so
Exactly.
I'm probably
Let me
trying to encourage.
Let me offer a counterpoint. We say that we want to make a trade-off, and the trade-off is we want more affordable housing. So how are we going to get more affordable housing? The answer we hear, and to challenge it as alarmist, is to change 10.6.9. 10.6.9 that isn't generating any isn't generating any age-restricted housing now. So now, as the Secretary just said, this will make it even more restrictive. So the likelihood of really getting any significant positive, significant broad change, zero. However, we are going to take away our local cap. We are going to take away our local control of these kinds of age-restricted units because we're going to turn them over essentially to the federal rules. To me, I don't see the cost benefit if you're not getting any units to invite the 1 or 2 or 5 problems you might have, not where 12 people are moving in with grandma, but where grandma moves in and perhaps a troublesome grandson and his friend move in for 3 months, and the neighbors don't know how to deal with it because no longer those rules apply. I'm just saying that these are the kinds of things that are at least reasonable concerns to explore further rather than just passing to pass it. And the exchange in terms of what you're getting, the answer so far is you've gotten 0 for age-restricted, you're likely to get the same, 0 with affordable as an additional restriction. And inviting this cap removal that has been in place for some reason that was put in by this commission for some good reason, which I think we all can kind of, as I've speculated about.
I'm sorry. Yes, please. I could
If
respond.
we
Go ahead.
support the idea of encouraging more affordable housing, to me it makes no sense to put in a restriction that HUD will reject as qualifying the units as affordable housing. We will have eviscerated the whole point of the
And that's why I reject
legislation.
10.6.9.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And in some ways, I think you're talking in circles because the regulation was designed to incent the development of the age-restricted housing. It has not been. No one has availed themselves of that provision. There's still the density bonus, but in another way, we are also opening the door to now elderly family developments in which only one member, 1 or more, needs to be age 55 or older. And the restriction of 2 persons living in the unit really has no place in that definition any longer. And so if you really believe that even with these amendments, no one's going to avail themselves of the incentive, then there won't be any of the problems that you speak of. And quite frankly, if a problem nephew or stepson coming and living in the place for 3 months or something like that is a problem for some reason, then that's what the police are for. That's what zoning enforcement is for. There are garbage issues or other kinds of, nuisances. It's not with respect to what constitutes an affordable housing unit under our regulations.
I'm saying-
I think it's incredibly short-sighted.
It's not short-sighted, and it isn't in a circle. What I'm saying is that when you decide to change the current 10.6.9, it appears that the likely aggregate value to the town is not very high. However, you do invite, by making these changes, individual problems that could crop up that the current caps at least discourage.
Like what? What?
Like the reasons for those being there, which is, as was described by
You said you didn't know
myself.
what the reasons were. What
No, that's
problems
not
could
true.
crop up?
No, I said what I said was that staff could not specifically cite what the rationale was for the original insertion of the cap. I speculated, and I'm glad to, as Commissioner Calabrese did, that anyone with common sense would think that caps like these were put in place by our predecessors for the rationale that they were worried about the possibility of age-restricted units being abused. And if we're not going to really see much in the way of aggregate additional affordable housing, I don't want to invite the likelihood of people having individual cases that are a problem. That is not circular reasoning, Mr. Chairman. That is an example of creating individual problems for little broad good, which is why we should table the changes to 10.6.9. But I can't, since you won't, neither of the individuals involved wish to accept a friendly amendment.
So, the motion as it stands now is to approve the zoning regulation amendments as they've been proposed. I believe that the record is clear that time and experience does dictate the need for the amendments. I think that there's been a demonstration that it will serve the general health and welfare of the town. I do think it will enhance the community. I think it's consistent with the POCD. We have spent so much time with affordable housing charrettes and with HUD and with developing an affordable housing plan and coming up with these proposals, and they've been vetted. We've gone through the public hearings. So my view is that we should take a vote on the motion that's been made. And if it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, a new motion can be made by those commissioners who feel that it should be parsed in some other way. All right? I mean, that's where I come out. Does anybody else have any more comments? No? All right. So the motion on the table is to approve. It's item A, zoning regulation amendments of 10.6.9, 10.6.10, 10.17.3, and 10.17.5. Okay? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Nays are Calabrese and Kennelly. The item passes. Next item is old business B, zoning subdivision regulations. Application of the Affordable Housing Committee of the Town of Fairfield to amend section 25.7 of the zoning regulations and 2.7 of the subdivision regulations regarding inclusionary zoning.
Okay, again, real quickly, I'll outline for the board what was presented to you at the public hearing. As mentioned, these proposals are to amend our zoning section 25.7 and our section 2 of our subdivision regulations, again pertaining to inclusionary zoning. The proposed changes would require that any development project that would result in a net increase of 10 or more residential units set aside not less than 10% of these units at a below rate housing market. The purpose of the proposed change as outlined to the Commission is to ensure that new large-scale residential development makes some provision for affordable housing in the development plans to meet the town's affordable housing goals. What was also emphasized at the hearing, and it did answer some, I think, misunderstanding, is that they emphasized that the proposal does not require the construction of new housing. Rather, it stipulates that in an event that such development is proposed, and also it should also meet the 10-unit threshold, then the applicant would need to provide affordable housing. There was some misunderstanding about this regulation. It was more like it put us into an 830G kind of review with no checks or balances. The density, all the other zoning criteria have not changed. All this is saying is that any development under our current regulations of 10 or more residential units would have to require 10% be affordable. That's essentially what these two regulation amendments are proposing, and that's what was planned at the public hearing.
Thank you. Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Coleman,
Second.
second by Commissioner Barron's. Commissioner Coleman?
Again, this seems to be a fairly painless way of encouraging the accumulation of more affordable housing units. I don't know how often we're going to have developments where you can put in 10 new houses, but should it occur, one of them will be affordable. So I'm in favor.
Thank you. Commissioner Barron's?
Yeah, again, just to clarify what this is, any projects with greater than 10 units, there'll be a 10% set aside.
Increase.
This really,
Increase by 10 units.
any projects where there's increase by 10 units. Right, but what I'm saying, the practical thing is, this doesn't need to be looked at with the, what we just did in section 10, because those changes are all assuming you're doing 20%. This is not an affordable housing development. This is not any special bonus or anything like that. This is just any place where they're going to increase by more than 10 units. So there's not that many cases where it does. Getting away from the subdivisions for a while, where do we build 10 new units at the same time or increase by 10 units? I mean, the ones that I've thought of in the past are actually a long ways back. Maybe people have better memories, but Pequot Landing, the Southport development with the hotel, and the one near Bed Bath & Beyond. That's a good example, because that I see is being constructed now, and it was approved years ago. And it took like 3 tries for that to be approved. And I remember we asking there, and I think that's about 14 units. So in a unit like that, you would get 2 units. It would have been, I remember we struggled with 14 or 16 units. I think it came out 14, and 13. It came out 13, because they had to come back to us 3 times. So even that would be, not less than 10% would require just, simple math on that. 2 units would have had to be affordable to be not less than 10%. They may have done it differently, but that's the type of thing we're doing. And I haven't seen that many developments greater than 10 units, and this is certainly not going to incent anybody to build greater than 10 units. I mean, it's a requirement. It's not an incentive. Before we were talking about Section 10, we're talking about density bonuses. There's no density bonus here. It means if you're adding 10 units, 10% affordable. I think it's good. It's across town. It basically does what we implemented in the transit-oriented development district, where we had that requirement, where people have taken advantage of that, again, because of that district, and just said, okay, across town, anytime we're getting more than 10 units, which, you could argue sometimes has some detrimental effect into our town in terms of, more people, well, 10% is affordable. We always want to be getting some affordable. So I like that concept here, and I support it. The one for the subdivision I'll support, but that one I struggle with a little more if there wasn't a better way to do this, meaning, we're talking about subdivisions. Again, we've had 4 in 20 years that were more than 10 units. And, Duck Farm is the most recent one I can even think of there. Maybe somebody could think of another one that was more recent. Not that many. Usually when we're thinking about affordable housing, we're thinking about a building, a development, apartments, where, you can have it like, there's certain requirements of affordable housing. I'm not sure how you build, a series of, let's say, $1 million homes, and then one of them has to be affordable. I think, there could have been different ways to do this, maybe with fee in lieu of or something like that. That's not what's proposed to us. I think that was brought up at the hearing. I would have liked to see maybe something there. We could start, collecting money towards affordable housing like we do with, open space.
Well, that's always an option. Again, this is just one of a toolbox.
But this is one of many things. So, I'm okay with it. I just don't, I don't see this as like the best way, and, but I don't think it's going to have a huge impact. Like I said, we don't have that many, hopefully we won't have more than 10 lot subdivisions or 10 unit subdivisions, and, but if we do, it will have to get an affordable unit. So I'm okay with it.
Commissioner Canal?
I'm just the reverse. I'm much more concerned regarding 25.7.9 and actually welcoming of the subdivision changes. And I thought it was very telling, and this is I have enormous professional respect for Commissioner Barrett, but I think it's very telling. How would you do $10 million homes and have to have $1 million home that somebody could live in affordably? That's my problem with the entirety of item B here. No, there's no bonus for density, no one's increasing density, but what was being very sadly poorly expressed by some of the representatives from neighborhoods like Grasmere, Tunxus Hill, Lower Stratfield, what they were concerned about when they used the term worried about change is their concern about what this effort to give us greater control over affordable housing and where it goes in our town will go. Because what that control, at least from how this spells out to me, is control that steers more development, obviously where there's going to be more dense building done. Well, there aren't going to be that many dense buildings done, probably in places that are more affluent in town. There aren't going to be 100-unit buildings like the one that Mr. Fitzpatrick brought before us just a short while ago. Where, at least they're not going to be many like those in Southport or Greenfield Hill or Hoydens Hill. Where will those more dense developments go? They will go in Grasmere. They will go near the train station. Metro Center, for example, now zoned commercial. There's an effort to make that residential. You get a ton of units there. My concern is that the issue of affordable housing was meant so that a municipality had to deal with the challenge of doing its part, taking on its responsibility for taking on affordable housing equally. I don't see this as a fair and equal distribution of how Fairfield as a town, as a total town, is taking this on. I welcome the subdivision changes, because I think that that's the whole point. The purpose of these federal and state laws is supposed to be that the bounty of the wealthier suburbs is shared by those struggling. Where instead are we likely to see with 25.79, where are we going to see affordable being captured? We're going to see it captured in the new developments that are 10, 20, 100 units, like the one that we were all excited to raise our hands for. But what was the only problem? Was the chairman rightly pointing out that we didn't we didn't stand by our principles and get the full number of affordable units for that 100.
I respond?
No, just make one. Let me just finish, and then you can respond.
All right, or let's let somebody else.
No, but here's the point. The federal government, we don't look at when we choose a project. We can't look at when we decide to vote up or down about any project that may afford affordable units or however there are. We can't consider effect on services and things like that. We can't think about the impact on schools. But when we are writing our own regulations about how we're going to distribute the responsibility for doing our part for affordable housing in the state of Connecticut in Fairfield, then part of that should be at least a look at what the possibility, the long term, I'm not talking about tomorrow or next week, but over the next 5 or 10 years, what the impact is when in the parts of town where there's most likely to be dense development, the eastern and southern part of southern eastern part of town, where already neighborhoods and neighborhood schools are struggling with issues related to racial imbalance. Look at McKinley School. Right now the federal government, and no, you can shake your head, but you can discuss this in the context of where you're going to distribute it, not on a particular project. The federal government says that no school in a district can be more than 25% higher in terms of racial disparity, in terms of the number of minorities in that school, than the town average. So right now the Board of Education is struggling with the fact that the town average for minorities in Fairfield is 14%, but at McKinley it's 43%. It's more than 25%, 39 would be that number. At Holland Hill, it's fast approaching that. There was just a report presented to the Board of Education by Dr. Title. So I have concerns about these regulations, first as a matter of fairness. I don't think it shares the burden fairly. I think what's going to likely happen is, you're right, a fee in lieu will be the replacement for the subdivision, and that wealthier communities in this town are going to be able to skate free in terms of dealing with doing their part for affordable housing. And I think that when you look at schools, there are only 450 or 500 in total population, and then you talk about these larger developments potentially on the east side of town over the next few years. You can have a swing of anywhere of 10, 20, 30, 40, or 50 new additional students that can further mess with balances that are going to require, whether we want to deal with it or not, other kinds of solutions. So as a matter of fairness, I don't support this.
Thank you. Mr. Barrett?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to disagree, and I think what Commissioner Kennelly said is, like, well, not guided the way I would think. I mean, we have a regulation that application we saw that covers transitory development. We spent years developing it, and it gave 10%, and there's all sorts of bonuses associated with that. This is just taking the 10% and distributing it throughout town. We haven't had, I mean, you're talking about the eastern part of town, there's been no large developments in the eastern part of town that weren't the 2 830Gs or in the transit, under our regulations. Under our regulations, there haven't been any. Like I said, the large developments, which in the last 20 years have been Pequot Landing, which is in Southport, the Southport Hotel, and the one near Bed Bath & Beyond. Not a single one, and you're talking about school districts, not a single one in that school district, except for the train station, which might be in that school district. This applies...
But that's even zone commercial.
But that's even zone commercial.
Right now.
This takes the 10% and applies it across the town. If you're talking about densities within town, that's another discussion, but this is taking the 10%. I don't see, and also, it's not under an affordable housing statute, this is under our special permit. You know, that still requires us to go approve a building, a large development, if we ever would, and it has all the standards of Section 25. We're well protected by that. We're just saying, if somebody wants to build under that, now they would have to meet the 10%, so I support it.
Thank you. You articulated my response very well.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, I appreciate it. Anybody else have any comments? We're ready to vote. A motion on the table is to approve
It'll be
zoning
the
subdivision.
same findings, by the way.
Same, right, so, for the record, I do believe that time and experience have shown us the need for the amendments here. I thought that was well articulated. It's also in the affordable housing report, which was submitted in the record. It's been demonstrated that it will serve the general welfare of our town, and frankly, the reasons articulated by Commissioner Barrett's, I think it will enhance the community, and it is agnostic with respect to zoning, these amendments, and would be applied equally in any part of town where a development that was under those regulations that it would apply to. And I think it's consistent with our plan of conservation and development. So for all those reasons, I would support the motion. Does anyone else have any comments? All right. Motion on the table is to approve item B under old business, application of the Affordable Housing Committee of the Town of Fairfield to amend section 25.7 of zoning regulations and 2.7 of the subdivision regulations regarding inclusionary zoning. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Opposed by Kennelly and Calabrese. The item passes. Next item on our agenda is compliances. You know what, before we get to the next agenda, I would just like to thank those members of the Affordable Housing Committee that are here tonight for their hard work and efforts in getting this together over the last years. Thank you. Next item is three compliances. 1201 Kings Highway, application of Blackrock Associates to establish a dental office in a portion of an existing building in the design commercial district.
Okay, this is at Staples Plaza on Kings Highway. There is a package store in the leftmost end of the building that has reduced itself in size. There is a tenant space there now between the package store and the newly opened AAA office. And a dental office is looking to take that space. The parking calculation for medical is the same as that for retail, so it does not increase the draw or demand for parking under our regulations, but is a change in use from retail or package store to a dental office.
Okay, thank you. It's permitted under our regulations.
It is.
Motion to approve?
Motion approved by Commissioner Kennelly,
Second.
second by Commissioner Noonan. Does anyone have any comments, questions? Ready to vote? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Item passes unanimously. Next item is 719 Villa Avenue, application of attorney David Quattrella on behalf of 6K LLC to establish a package store in an existing building in the design commercial district.
Okay, this site is an approximately 2,000 square foot retail space. For many years, it was the home of the House of Formals. More recently, it's become a frame shop. The owner is looking to relocate. Tungus Hill Package Store presently exists a couple doors down from Andros Diner on the Tungus Hill roadside. They're moving that package store. The intention of this application is to move that package store from that location to this location. The state of Connecticut allows them to apply for a moving permit if they're moving less than 500 feet from their present location. There's a surveyor certificate in your packet that provides for that. And secondly, any package store has to be 1,500 feet clear door to door from the next nearest package store. There's a second surveyor certificate indicating that it exceeds 1,500 feet from the next nearest package store. So it's really a conversion of a building from retail use to package store use, which is a separate line item use in our regs, but other than that, it complies in all respects with the regs.
Thank you.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Kennelly. Second by Commissioner Noonan. You raised your hand there.
I did, yeah.
Very good. I reviewed the packet. This all looks consistent and good to me. Does anybody else have any comments, questions? No? All right. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The item passes unanimously. Next is public hearing. 8:30. Why don't we take a 5-minute break? We reconfigure and we'll resume. So adjourn the hearing for 5 minutes. Okay, we're all ready? Call the meeting back to order. Next item on our agenda is the public hearing. Item number 1, 721 Hulls Highway, re-subdivision application of Vargas Construction for 2 lots in the AA zone.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, my name is Michael Baturla. I'm a licensed land surveyor, licensed professional engineer here in the state of Connecticut, also a member of the Huntington Company. Our office is here in Fairfield. Tonight's application is for a lot at 721 Hulls Highway. We're on the west side of Hulls Highway where Range Road comes in at an intersection, bordered on the west side by Wakeman Lane. On the property there's a larger barn, a smaller barn, and a chicken coop. This piece of property was once part of the house to the north that's right now being renovated. That house was split out of this property back in 1975. Right now, again, the house is being renovated, a new garage added, and there's proposed landscaping. But again, that was a different application. This piece of property is 2.5 acres in size. It's in residential zone AA, which requires only 1 acre per lot. A requirement also is a 135-foot rectangle. It's my opinion that the 2 lots are conforming to your zoning regulations. What the first sheet also shows is there's a portion of a piece of property on Wakeman and also a small piece on Hulls Highway that will be deeded to the town for a road right-of-way. And that's to get the required 50-foot right-of-way for both streets. So there's a sliver on Wakeman, there's a sliver on Hulls Highway, and there's a little triangular piece on the Wakeman side that'll be deeded to the town. On the second sheet, I show the proposed location of 2 houses. Because of the additional impervious area of the house and the driveway, I have designed stormwater systems for the house and drive. They'll be picked up by underground PVC chambers, similar to a septic system, and the backyard will drain into a proposed rain garden. I did computations for all storms, from the 2-year storm to the 100-year storm, and each storm there'll be a reduction in stormwater runoff. There's public water that will service the 2 houses that exist on Hulls Highway. There's a sewer just to our north that ends and goes down, I forget what street that is right now, but it's approximately 100 feet to our north. We have plans, the plan calls for the extension of the existing sanitary sewer to go an additional 350 feet to the intersection with Range Road, and this way we'll be able to tie into the public sewer rather than have septic systems.
So that's a renovation of the
That's what,
sewer system in the public right-of-way that the applicant is going to make on its own?
that's correct. The third sheet shows the construction, and again, the third sheet is a requirement of the sewer district to show the obligation of the subdivider. The plan, also, the two proposed driveways, we took a look at the sight lines for lots 1 and 2. On lots 1, the required sight line northbound was 184 feet. We have available 450 feet. Again, the driveway for lot 1 required on the southbound would be 200 feet. I've got 395 feet available. Lot 2 northbound required 202. Available is 350. Again, lot 2 southbound required 196. I have 550 feet. My sightline computations and drainage computations were reviewed by Laura Pooley of the engineering department, and one of her first sets of comments to planning and zoning to staff was that the sight lines are adequate. She also made a comment that stormwater attenuation is provided for the 2 through the 100-year storms, so she's agreed on both my sets of computations. What she did require us to do, and that's reflected by the revised date on the set of drawings, she wanted a swale put on the southerlymost property line to protect any runoff to go to the neighbor up to our south, and the same thing on the east side. So we've added that and satisfied her concerns there. And on the first sheet, she wanted more monumentation on the property line corners, and we have agreed to do that. Her second set of comments, in my opinion, states that we've accomplished all the items she requested, including we added a stormwater easement over the proposed rain garden, and that'll be in perpetuity to the owner of lot 1, so he'll be required to maintain that and not the town.
Have a question before you move on? Commissioner Barrett?
And I just don't understand Ms. Pooley's fifth comment today. It says, according to the Huntington Company, Lot 2 has an error of closure that exceeds required standards.
Yes, on her first set of comments, they had a question on my lot number 2, that it didn't close. All that means in surveying terms is if you start at a point, you traverse around the lot, and you don't exactly hit the same spot. It was off by 3/100ths of a foot, which is 3/8 of a foot. If you take, again, these are all requirements of the state. The distance you traverse around divided by your miss is your area of closure. And an A2 survey requires 1 in 5,000, and an A1 is 1 in 10,000. That 3/8 of a miss represents a 1 in 37,000. So it exceeds an A1, by many times. So that's...
You're off by 5 inches, is that what it is?
No, 3/8 of an inch.
3/8 of an inch?
Yes.
She was just giving you props?
Yeah, I just didn't understand
I'm
what
sorry?
that meant. Yeah, she was complimenting you?
Well, her department just said the lot didn't close. It didn't close by 3/8 of an inch, but it's well within the tolerance allowed by the state of Connecticut.
Was she perhaps saying that because it was remarkable that you...
No, I think she just got that remark from one of her support. I really don't know. I can't speak for Laura,
Yeah.
but it was in her comments, and she mentioned again on her second set. So it's,
Right.
it wasn't the end of the world. I had a valid explanation. Now, the only thing that, again, on her second set of comments, we don't have tonight to present to you a formal grading plan. Planting plan. She wanted a planting plan for the rain garden area. We've talked to a couple landscape architects. We couldn't get that plan to you in time for tonight's meeting.
Well, normally, Ms. Pooley doesn't require landscaping. Why would she be requiring a landscaping plan for the proposed rain garden in this application?
That I don't know. She's mentioned it on her first set of comments, and she pointed out that it wasn't, on
Yeah,
part of
I
this
didn't
package.
see it either, yeah. And,
But-
I mean, for a basic subdivision plan, we typically don't require a landscaping plan.
In this particular case, I think because it was a rain garden where the obligation would be either on the developer here or whoever might buy this lot in order to have a plan that shows thou shalt do this. You see what I mean?
Because you took into account the proposed rain garden in your
As part of my
calculations
drainage, yes, that's
for
exactly right.
drainage, so she was
Yes.
probably then
It's an
looking
engineer's.
for...
She was
yeah.
concerned that someone might buy the lot and walk away and be negligent and not to do anything.
Or maybe put in some landscaping which did not achieve the
Exactly right.
desired result
That's
that a
exactly
rain
right.
garden is supposed to
Yeah,
accomplish.
yeah.
So how do you suggest we deal with that deficiency?
Again, it's your call. I can say that we could come back with a formal plan, have her review it and report to you and
Do as a condition
see us next month.
of approval?
It's-
Yeah, that's what-
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Well, we can deal with that in executive session. Yeah.
Questions
all right.
on?
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Rochelle? Mr. Francis?
On lot number 2, the riprap with vermin-proof outlet, now, that's for storm water?
At the rain garden?
No, lot number 2, this little square here.
Oh, yes, no, that's for the footing drain. That's a typical thing that the engineering department looks for, and that's what we usually do anyway. So the water going through the foundation drain has to empty someplace, and in this case, I show it where I show it because the grades allow me to discharge it there. And you usually put stone around there, and you vermin-proof the outlet so some critter doesn't crawl up the pipe and plug up the pipe, and you have water in the basement.
What do they use to vermin-proof it, a very fine mesh or something?
No, riprap is just a 6-inch
Yeah.
and smaller stone. It's just a place to, so the velocities are lessened when the water shoots out of the pipe.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Oh, so it's
It's
just...
so it doesn't scour a grass area. It's
Right.
got a place to slow up, that's all.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr.
Just so the commission knows, it's prepared for Vargas Construction. Mr. Chris Vargas, who's a member of Vargas Construction, is here in case you have any questions of him.
Does anyone have any questions, Mr. Vargas? No. Thank you very much. Does any member of the public wish to be heard on this item? Going once, twice? All right. I'll close the public hearing on this item. Next item is 5066 Umpqua Place, special permit application of Umpqua Place 50 LLC and Umpqua Place 66 LLC for additions and alterations to establish a medical office building in the Center Design District.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, for the record, my name is Bill Fitzpatrick. I'm an attorney in Fairfield with the law firm of Fitzpatrick, Frey and Bologna. We have offices at 1735 Post Road. I'm here this evening representing Umpqua Place Partners 50 LLC and Umpqua Place Partners 66 LLC, the owners of the property at 50 and 66 Umpqua Place. 50 Umpqua Place was the location of the Blin's Toy Store, which has closed operations, basically due to the internet. 66 Umpqua Place contains a two-family home and garage. These properties are located in the Center Design Business District. These properties are being merged. As part of this application, the combined properties, which are located on the east side of Umpqua Place, south of the railroad, contain 25,870 square feet. The intent of the applicants is to remove the two-family home and garage and renovate the former Blin's store into a two-story building for medical offices. The prospective medical office tenant is a well-known, well-respected pediatric practice, Pediatric Healthcare Associates. The renovated building will contain a total of 10,000 square feet. Mr. Chairman, the presentation to the Commission tonight will consist of Michael Baturla, the project engineer, as well as Jack Franzen, the project architect, and Michael Galante to explain his traffic report. I will then conclude. This property, as I noted, is located in the Center Design Business District, which includes medical offices as a special permit permitted use. As I outlined, the medical use anticipated for this building is anticipated to be a single user. The parking demand generated per the zoning regulations is calculated at the rate of 1 parking space for every 200 square feet, or 50 parking spaces given the 10,000 square foot office building. The proposed plan provides 51 parking spaces, 1 in excess of the requirement. Mr. Chairman, at this point, I'd like to introduce Mr. Michael Baturla, a professional engineer with the Huntington Company, to discuss the proposal. Michael.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, my name is Mike Baturla, licensed land surveyor, licensed professional engineer here in Connecticut, also a member of the Huntington Company, and our office is here in Fairfield. As Attorney Fitzpatrick said, the property right now consists of 2 parcels of land. 1 parcel is the existing Lynn's building. The other parcel, there exists an existing house and an existing barn. The plan is to take down the 2 other buildings and keep the Lynn's store. When I did the drainage study on this piece of property, I looked at the preconditions of a piece of property that was had lawn on it rather than 3 buildings and an existing hard surface parking lot. The reason I did that is it meant more drainage that we had to put in, but it ended up as a better product as far as the town goes. And it's my opinion that Laura Pooley, in her discussions for the code enforcement minutes of July 21, stated that as one of her first comments. The post-development flow rate from the 2 through the 100-year storm events have been reduced, and that's what my drainage calculations show. And it says the rates with pre-development being described as a grass surface, typically found in the half-acre zone. So I have more than what would be required if I studied this as a hard surface parking lot and 3 buildings. The reductions.
Any particular reason why you did that, considering that there is commercial building and asphalt on the land right now?
I was told by her when I began that it would be beneficial for her and the town if we looked at it that way. And it just added more underground units. All the storage are going to be in 4x4 concrete galleys. Again, similar to a septic system. Water quality will be improved. We have a stormwater cleaner unit that will take the water from the proposed catch basins, clean the water, send them into the underground units, and there'll be a high-level overflow that goes into the existing storm sewer out in the street. There's an existing sanitary sewer that already services the property that we will be utilizing. Again, all the storms from the 2 to the 100 are reduced in flow. It's a typical underground stormwater system, and water quality will be greatly improved because we have a stormwater cleaner that will take the water again from the catch basins before they go into the underground units. questions of me.
Anyone have any other questions for Mr. Vitrillo? No? Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Mr. Chairman, at this point, I'd like to introduce Mr. Jack Franzen of J.P. Franzen Associates Architects, P.C., to discuss this proposal.
Good evening. I'm Jack Franzen of 1241 Post Road, the architect for the proposed building. As explained, 50 and 66 Encore Place is proposed to be a renovation of the Blins building. And what we're proposing is a second floor addition, as well as external improvements to the building that are consistent with the current architectural standards in the regs. And we have some samples here of the materials we're going to use, which I can show you. But the characteristics that I think are most pertinent to the regs are the creation of a front-facing human-scale entry, which we have on the corner of the property here. Also, that the exterior of the building is going to be upgraded from concrete block, and obviously we're getting rid of that wooden barn-like aperture on the front of the building facing west, and we're cladding the building in brick. We're also using cast stone material for the base of the building, which is this strip here, for the windowsills. And that's the cast stone. It looks like limestone. It's made of, crushed marble and cement. And the brick, which I think is actually the same brick we used on the post office. So it's consistent with other brick that you see
Plan
in
B?
downtown Fairfield.
Plan B?
Yes, yeah.
Is it a brick veneer or full brick?
It's going to be a veneer brick because we're using the concrete block that's there, so we're not going to add another 4 inches to what's there.
Surfacing the
Yeah.
building.
And it's also more energy efficient when we get up to the second floor because there's actually insulation behind that brick that's fairly thick. The basin sills, as I mentioned, are cast stone. That portico that I mentioned is cast stone. And the trim, which is the entablature here, and the window trims are all in lieu of wood and consistent with the other buildings we've done in downtown Fairfield. We're using the cellular PVC product, which some people call AZAC, but it's low maintenance. And the side elevations also...
Sorry, just the portico, is that a walkthrough?
This is an enclosed entry.
Yeah.
So it's glazed on both sides.
So the doors are on the side of the wall, and you walk into a little a vestibule.
Exactly, and the stairs are there, and the doors actually face onto the street. The side elevations are consistent with the facade. We're running that entablature around all 4 sides of the building. The windows are vertically proportioned, and they're double-hung windows. For the most part, they're either 6/6 or 6/1 with clear panes on the bottom, and then the vestibule has a larger element, a large piece of glass, and then a divided light window above, which is I guess you'd say it's a 6x3, 18 light multi-pane window. There's a parapet. There's a flat roof. The parapet goes up above the flat roof, and you can't see the flat roof. And the mechanicals, which I think show in one of the elevations, the closest point the mechanicals come to the edge of the roof is 23 feet. So they're set back pretty far from the edge. The building itself is 58 by 98 on the ground. The second floor is smaller. It's inset on the south side and on the east side because of the setbacks, because the existing building is actually right on the property line on the east and on the south. The rendering, I think, shows maybe a little bit of that. Can you show me the other rendering, David? On the other side. You can see that inset on the south side. That's what I'm talking about. The plan works really well for the proposed tenant with about 5,500 square feet, a little more than that on the first floor, and around 4,000 plus square feet on the second floor. As Mike said, the site provides 51 parking spaces, including 3 accessible spaces, one of which is for a van, and it's one more than was required. There are 5 bike racks, and the bike racks are located over here on the southwest corner of the property. The dumpster location is on the other side, on the north, in the middle of the parking field. Let's get a site plan. Let's get the one with the plantings on it. The dumpster is over here on the north side, and the dumpster is enclosed with a boarded and gated structure, which you see here in the upper right-hand corner of the rendering. And the ground transformer and the generator are located on a pad tucked over here on the northeast corner. So it's probably the least visible part of the site. Those two also they have to be a certain distance off the building, so they are, and then there's these little dots are bollards to protect, them from cars backing into them. The lighting that we're proposing is by means of LED fixtures. There's a pole light, which, when you look at the wattage, it's 70 watts, and the wall light is 50 watts, so that's like my kitchen lights are 50 watts. It's amazing how much light you can get from these LEDs. We're proposing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wall lights, and I think there are 4 pole lights. There's one here, 2 here, and 1 here. The plantings, we have, I think there's 4 red buds here, 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 and here, and there's 4 maples proposed here, 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 and here. They're 2.5-inch calipers. And there's actually some existing trees on the north side on the neighbor's property that we don't own, but we're going to do our best to try to save them. Some of the parking is on where the roots are, but one of them happens to be behind the dumpster, so maybe we can disturb those less. There is a little strip of undisturbed land there. There's another tree over here on the northwest corner that I think the tree warden said wasn't in great shape. So, and I'm not sure, I think it is on our property. We could replace it or maybe see how it works with the survival. There are actually 2 other trees on the south side that are nice trees. This is actually a nice maple tree, not on our property. We're not going to disturb it, and the same thing for this one here.
Replacing that maple in the north corner would be good. You've got a nice distribution of trees consistent with our regulations for the shade trees in the parking lot.
Yeah, it'll be a big upgrade as far as trees go in that part of the world. Yeah.
And so replacement of that tree in the corner would be nice. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I turned it off because I was turning pages over here. So I was just saying that replacement of that tree in the northeast, well, whatever, upper left.
We did take some pictures of the old building, which you know what it looks like. I spent many hours there with my wife picking out Christmas presents and birthday presents and what have you, and it's sad to see it go, but we think we have a nice project, and I'm going to turn it back to Bill, and I'm here to answer questions.
Thank you, Jack. Mr. Chairman, at this point, I'd like to introduce Mr. Michael Galante of Frederick B. Clark Associates to discuss the traffic analysis submitted.
Good evening, Mike Galante, Frederick Clark Associates, traffic consultant for the applicant. If I can just run through and use boards and charts and tables from the report itself, summarize the results of the traffic study. You want to take those? Just for reference purposes for the site, this is figure 2 from our report. The site is located on, we'll call it the easterly side of Uncle Place. Of course, this is the Post Road, Old Post Road, Uncle Road, the Fairfield Center train station, top left side of the picture itself. We conducted traffic counts in the area. Traffic counts were done when schools were open back in May. You can show that, we can prove that by the school bus count in the data itself. The morning peak was found to be 8 to 9 a.m. in the morning. The afternoon peak was found to be 4:45 to 5:45 in the afternoon. Typical commuter peak hours, certainly for the downtown area of Fairfield Center. Reference traffic volumes, the morning peak was about 1,400 vehicles on Post Road. The afternoon, which was the highest of the two peak hours, about 1,700 vehicles. For comparison purposes, on Uncle Place, anywhere from 120 vehicles to about 240 vehicles morning and afternoon. So the afternoon has the higher volume. In the afternoon, you'll see more commuter traffic from the train station as opposed to in the morning, where many of the commuters are actually going to the station before the peak of the roadway system itself. The next step was to expand our traffic to a future condition. We applied a 0.5% per year growth rate, and we added traffic in for the Plan B, which was not open at the time, and that center as it stands. And the next step was to figure out the estimate for the renovated building into a medical building, and using standards from ITE, we estimate anywhere from 24 to 36 trips, 24 being in the morning peak, 36 trips being in the afternoon peak. These numbers represent a combination of staff and patients that may be coming in for their first visit, and again, staff leaving in the afternoon and the last patients of the day. And this we put on top of the commuter peak hour of the roadway system. Its location is near the train station, bus stops along Post Road. We don't apply any credits for someone, staff really, that might be taking the train. You may find a patient that's taking the train, but I doubt it. But staff, I think the answer would be, yes, someone would be taking the train, but we don't apply any credit for that. We use the standard rates from the book itself. Next step was to distribute that site traffic onto the roadway system. And we looked at traffic patterns, or certainly our knowledge of the area, and we estimated our traffic as far as traveling to and from the site itself. We have the Post Road. We have someone come from Old Post Road itself. We have Uncle Road going towards the schools, and Carter Henry Drive. We call it south because it's actually the north side on the other side of the tracks, to be very specific. We estimate in our case 80% of this traffic is going to and from the Post Road, to show really a worst case scenario. We do assume about 20% is going past the train station. That bypasses the Post Road, to be honest, and takes you to Mill Plain Road. Anyone that lives in the area would probably do that, including me, if I was going to this site itself. Next step was to add the traffic to the roadway system, do our analyses, and we, in this case, did two sets of analyses. One is actual simulation, because it's, I want to call it a complex set of signalized intersections, but it's a busy area, Fairfield Center. There is traffic congestion on the Post Road. We acknowledge that. We provided two different models to make sure we represented what was out there as far as what we see in the field. And this chart, which is Table 5, and I'll actually go back to Table 7, but essentially our purpose in this study was to see if we're actually changing anything as far as traffic volumes, congestion, levels of service, and so on. A lot of numbers, two different charts, Table 5 and Table 7. This is a more detailed analysis and model that we used, all accepted and I wouldn't say required by DOT, but expected for us to be using it. And what this table shows, very simply, is that we're not changing how the intersections operate. Post Road is very busy. Post Road, Old Post Road, Uncle Place, Uncle Road intersections, which operate together, are busy, certainly during the peak periods. And our purpose here was, are we changing anything? The answer is no, we are not. In essence, adding 24 or 20 or 36 vehicles during the peaks doesn't change the operation. And I know the chairman was asking for percentages, and I don't have that table in this report. But if you look at the volume on the Post Road, if you take the 36 trips and all that traffic is going on the Post Road, which it is not, east of the site or east of Uncle Place, it's about a 2% increase as far as increase in traffic.
Yeah.
Now we look at that, we look at really more of, you know, how does the intersection operate from a level of service and delay and queuing aspect, and it's, to be honest, quite complex. So in essence, the simple way of describing it is, yes, we're adding traffic, no doubt. We're not changing how the intersections operate. Yes, they are busy, and yes, there are delays and congestion at certain times of the day. If you were to put a pure retail use back in this building at the 10,000 square feet, it's one trip more during the afternoon peak hour. In the morning, the retail store would be certainly closed, so it wouldn't be fair to say we're certainly adding traffic during the morning peak.
As opposed to a medical building.
Yeah, yes, I'm comparing a medical building use at the same square footage to a
retail.
generic, if you will, retail use.
Mhm.
In the weekday afternoon, the medical is 36 trips, a retail use is 37 trips during a peak hour. If you put a toy store back in the afternoon peak, it's about 24 trips. Now, I can't say what Blim's was actually generating at the time, but if you do a generic toy store,
They went out of business.
it'd be
They
about 20.
probably weren't doing 24
It would've been,
trips.
yeah, I don't want to go there, but it's a lower trip generation. If it was Toys R Us, it'd be a different story. We looked at accident history, of course, as we always do. In this
Can we go
case,
back to table 7 for a moment before you move
Table
on?
7, sure.
Anybody else have any questions
This
on
one
table
here,
7?
yeah.
So, I mean, I appreciate what you're saying about, impact on
Yeah.
the roads and everything in comparison with the retail. There is a difference, though, in level of service in 4 rows. You do go from a level A to a level B, and a level B to a level C in certain instances in build, 2016 build, right? Or am I misreading that?
No, that's okay. I'm not sure where you are at the moment, but the best way to do a comparison,
Yeah.
looking at that chart, is a no-build condition
Right,
on the right side. And this is just afternoon, because this is the worst-case scenario.
yep,
So the middle column, if you will, under this microscopic analysis,
that's what I'm looking at.
that's no build. And then the last set of columns on the right is the build condition.
That's what I'm looking at.
Okay, so, and then you
So
were
if you
saying...
go 2016 no build, the third and fourth line down.
Oh, I see it. A
Level
A
of
to B.
service A.
A to B.
Post 2016 build condition goes to level B.
Yep.
And the same is true on line 4.
B to C, down below.
And then if you go down to the next box, you'll see on the third and fourth lines down, you go from a level B to a level C on 2 lines.
Yeah, I don't mean to not represent those, but when you're in levels A, B, and C, the changes between the 3, if you will, is certainly not considered, I'll use the word significant, but it's not, I know I get in trouble for using that word, but it's perfectly acceptable. It's a very minor increase in delay, so we kind of put that aside. When I'm referring to levels of service that change, and then when you start having a concern, it's really D to E, D to E, D to F in that range. You can even have a C to D, which is certainly acceptable. It's certainly more delay. When you go A, B, and C, you kind of put that aside. Then
Yeah, I
you-
just wanted to be sure, because I mean, what you said was, there's no change
Yeah,
in
and I
level
was,
of service.
yeah, and I apologize. You are correct. And overall, overall is important as far as the intersection as a whole, which the state looks at as far as their review. They look at all of it, but the overall has a change as an operation as the whole intersection. In this case, we're looking at 2 intersections that operate under 1 traffic controller, which is not unique, but these
Right.
intersections are quite close.
Okay.
Overall, they're working the same.
Yep, I just wanted to
Okay, no, that's
be
fine.
sure I
I-
wasn't misinterpreting what I
No,
was
no,
seeing.
you are
given-
correct.
Given what you said.
Yeah.
The other question I had was on the footnote for the microscopic model
Table
that we
7?
were just talking about, table 7, yeah. And maybe this footnote has appeared in your reports previously, but I don't recall ever seeing this. So the second bullet point on the last note says 3 minutes seating time is used to fill the network with traffic. It is not, it is long enough for a vehicle to traverse the entire network with stop time included, and it is longer than the maximum cycle length used in the network. What does that mean?
First of all, you haven't seen that footnote before
Right.
because this type of model has not been presented to you.
Okay.
Table 5 is the model you see on a regular basis from
Right.
us.
So if I mean, what I conceptualized when I read this and what happened is that there's a computer model now that you're populating with cars and you're pressing the button and then letting things sort of
You make it sound so
happen.
simple.
Well,
Garrett, did you hear that?
and you're filling the network with cars during certain times to sort of see how the whole
You,
thing works together.
you let the model run
Right.
to see how it functions and how the queues accumulate, if I
Yeah.
can say it that way, through these 2 intersections. So in very simple terms, that's what we're doing. And
Right.
you let it run for an hour, actually, and it's a
So-
simulation on a screen.
And so all of the notes basically say that there was not an anomaly in the model
Correct.
which needed to be explained.
Yeah, and when we do this model, and it really is a simulation, it shows the cars moving on the screen and so on, or queuing up, that's how we get the queuing analysis, and that's how we get the model as far as the delays. We're actually watching that. We actually let it run for an hour, and then within that hour, we look at the 15-minute period, and it's very complicated. To be honest with you, Garrett is sitting back there, and others in my office do all the modeling. I guess I'm fortunate or unfortunate not to be doing that, but that's how we watch traffic conditions, and that's how we measure and observe to see how an intersection operates before and after. And in this case, because of the intersections and how they operate, we did the more, I hate to call it, but the more sophisticated model.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
And that's just a summary of the report.
Those are my questions. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Fonte? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, this is a relatively straightforward application.
Are you summing up?
I am summing up.
Can I ask you one question about
Absolutely.
parking? Thanks. So there is a lot of congestion in terms of parking downtown after hours, the restaurants and all that. There's a fair amount of use of parking right now in the Bank of America, right, in the downtown area for those who are sort of in the area after hours. Is parking here going to be restricted when the building is not being used for the medical use? In other words, will people be able to park in the lot after hours?
The use is used until they have better than a skeleton staff, but they have a 6 to 9 p.m.
That
use.
actually was a better first question. What are the proposed
Yeah,
hours?
they open at 9 is my understanding, but then they continue to 9 at night. And they do have, as with children, they do have Saturday and Sundays on an as-needed basis. So there's not going to be a great deal of time that they're not quote-unquote open. I do not think they're going to engage in the policemen in the parking lot keeping other people out during hours when their parking is not being utilized.
That was my question. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we've appeared at Code Enforcement. We addressed relevant concerns expressed during that meeting. Conservation confirmed it had no jurisdiction. The drainage report prepared by Mike Baturla, you've seen, it reduces runoff, leaving the site for all storms from the 2-year through 100-year storm, provides for groundwater recharge as well as water quality improvements, and Laura Pulley has expressed her approval in the Code Enforcement minutes. The relevant sections of Section 25.7 are addressed by this application as follows. 25.7.1 is satisfied where the proposed use, medical offices, is a permitted use in this zone. 25.7.2 has been satisfied since a detailed site plan in compliance with the specific section requirements has been submitted. 27.3 is satisfied since you have detailed architecturals in your file. 27.4 is not relevant, there's no road construction. 7.5 is equally irrelevant, deals with non-conforming lots while this lot conforms. 25.7.6 deals with landscaping and buffers. You've heard from Jack Franzen on that point. 25.7.8 states the proposed use shall be compatible with the plan of development. The proposed medical use here is consistent with both the zoning regulations as well as the existing use pattern downtown. The design has incorporated elements set forth in the master plan as part of the building renovations. The remaining part of Section 25 to be addressed is 25.7.7. First mandate is that the development shall be of such a character as to harmonize with the neighborhood. Certainly, medical use is a staple or at least a common use in the downtown Fairfield area. That kind of use promotes cross-usage of other medical uses as well as use of downtown restaurants and downtown retail. This building and its medical use are clearly compatible with downtown Fairfield's character. The section further mandates the protection of property values in the neighborhood and the preservation and enhancement of the appearance and the beauty of the community. Clearly, the effect of this adaptive reuse, which eliminates a non-conforming residential use, will only enhance neighborhood property values, and the Franzen design is an upgrade in terms of appearance and beauty. The last section is 25.7, to avoid undue traffic congestion. Traffic study makes it clear that nearby intersections will continue to operate with minimal project delay as a result of the traffic generated by the proposed redevelopment during the morning and evening peak hours. You've got a letter from Mark Barnhart in your file confirming that the Town Economic Development Commission has voted unanimously to support this proposal. That letter states in part, the proposed development would harmonize with the area and be compatible with adjoining commercial uses. And it further states, the proposed development represents a significant investment in the community that would yield additional tax revenues and create employment opportunities for area residents. Mr. Chairman, I believe this application conforms to the relevant zoning criteria in all respects. The height is modest at 2 stories. The building coverage is 22.2%, far below the permitted building coverage of 90%. The floor area is 38.7%, a fraction of the permitted floor area ratio of 200%. The medical use that will occupy the premises is, as I stated, well-known and respected. The tenant, Pediatric Healthcare Associates, is an independent pediatric group providing patient-centered, evidence-based quality care for patients from infancy through young adult, through compassion, collaboration, and open communication with their families and the community. Pediatric Care Associates includes several local doctors, including Dr. Jerry Hemingway, Dr. Robert Hobby, Dr. Nancy Amberson, and Dr. Thomas Homa. This is a quality medical practice that's already a beneficial member of the Fairfield community. For these reasons, I'd request this application be approved. My clients are here with me, and they, as well as Mr. Petrola, Mr. Franzen, and Mr. Galante, and I, would be happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? No? Thank you very much. Does any member of the public wish to be heard on this item? No? Going once, going twice?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. I'll close the public hearing on this item, and I'll adjourn the meeting.